Good day, good people. You're listening to Lifting the Veil. I'm your host, Cari-Lee, and today I am joined by author, actor, playwright, producer, Nabil Shaban. Welcome to the show, Nabil. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Absolutely fantastic. It's wonderful to have you on the show. For those of you that don't know, Nabil did a beautiful piece for Unveiled and Lifted, and here I have to thank you so much for what you did. Justin was the one who had sent me your contact, and when you had written out what you had written about not just lifting the veil, but tearing it down, ripping it to shreds and burning it, you struck something within me that I was wondering why I hadn't spoken to you so much sooner. So thank you so much for that. Where did that inspiration come from?
Well, probably because I've been interested in the veil for a long time. The idea that there is a barrier between what we think we experience and something else. And that it's, obviously thinking about Hindu philosophy and its concept of Maya, which is basically that, everything is an illusion. And having studied Indian philosophy back at university, I became very interested in that idea that everything around us is an illusion, and often the illusion is manufactured either by ourselves because we can't face the reality, the truth, but often and, well, more likely, the illusion is manufactured by the power controllers and, through education, through mass media, through entertainment, through religion, through philosophies, etc. And the reason they create this illusion is obviously to keep us under their control. And as a left-wing political person, I'm all about trying to change the power structure, change the balance of power, and see to it that it becomes more balanced, and that each individual that exists on Earth has access to the power that they are entitled to and have a right to, because we are all equal, really. There's no one that's got a God-given right to have more power than anybody else. So when you and Justin contacted me, and actually I was quite flattered that you should ask me to contribute, it of course struck a chord with me, and I identified and basically wrote what I wrote because of what has been bubbling around in my head for a long time.
It was very greatly appreciated, and as I said, for me, it motivated me to go even deeper than I already was, and you even had me questioning the title of my show. Oh no, do I change it? Because we don't want to just lift it anymore. Are we burning it now? Is it the burning of the veil? But in all honesty, you did offer an awful lot of inspiration and drove us to just dig deeper and go farther with our project. So thank you very much for your contribution.
Well, now, the reason why I kind of put in the idea of burning the veil is that it's all very well lifting the veil, but the buggers can put it back again. The veil,
and they will if they can.
Absolutely. So that was why I was thinking, well, let's make it a once and for all job. If we destroy the veil, then they won't have anything with which they can continue to or attempt to re-establish the mask, the screen between us and what is the truth.
I totally agree. And if we had more people, and I think that's what we're reaching slowly but surely, critical mass is coming, and more people are awake to several different levels of the veil, we'll say. Because there are different levels, because it's rabbit holes, it's levels, it's different shears that are behind the veil. And slowly but surely, that veil's coming down, and once it is down and everybody has that awakening, and maybe I'm being naive, but I really do believe that there's going to be a time where the veil has absolutely no standing with them anymore.
Yeah, hopefully.
It's one of those things that one day, maybe not my children or myself, but my children or my children's children. Now, that being said, now you say that you're political left wing. Would you honestly consider yourself to be on the wing of the bird, or are you kind of just along for the flight trying to help it progress somewhere you'd like to see it go?
I see myself as the bird with wings. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not just there for the flight. I just want to change society, change the world in the direction of left-wing politics. And because I prefer left-wing politics to right-wing politics, I'm vehemently anti-capitalist. In fact, I just noticed I got a damn advert on my Skype here, and it's for business cards. Can't get rid of it. And not only that, I decided as we were talking to reduce the size of the Skype. And what happens is the damn advert stays and you shrink. Your picture shrinks. And
well, isn't that something?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm stuck with this premium business cards advert, and I can't get rid of it.
Well, buy, consume. Everything will be okay as long as you're spending your dollars.
That's right.
Now, you have, from what I was reading, I saw that you had been blacklisted it was a bit of trivia on IBM, that you've been blacklisted because you opposed the Gulf War. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm assuming. Obviously, no one's confirmed that. It's, obviously a lot of people think I'm just being paranoid. But the fact is that I used to work quite regularly on British television as an actor, and would often be asked to, talk on talk shows and whatever, especially during the 1980s and throughout the first half of the 1990s. I think there's two things actually that are going on. Not just me personally being blacklisted, but actually I think since 97 onwards there has been a progression in removing disabled people from public view. And up until about 97, 98, and maybe at the beginning of the 21st century, we used to have quite a number of disability-orientated broadcasting. So all of our 4 channels had at least one program weekly, usually a sort of magazine program, which would be run by disabled people. Produced, the presenters were all disabled, and this was a development that had actually started around about the mid-70s in Britain with one of the station channels, ITV, and then throughout the 80s it progressed until by the middle of the 90s all 4 of the channels had these disabled controlled programming. However, I was suspecting that our days were numbered. I could see the writing on the wall that basically society is planning to remove disabled people from society in Britain. And they obviously, as a precursor to that, they would need to remove disabled spokespersons, anyone that, or any issue-based programming which is liable to focus on the downsizing of disability opportunities, benefits, etc., etc. So I saw the TV programs start to disappear until by the time we got to the beginning of the 21st century, there were no specialised, or as I used to call it, ghetto programming. And of course we now are in a situation where we can see why that's happened, because at the moment in Britain, disabled people are the most heavily persecuted and harassed by the government than any other group. Although obviously they still want to, they're still anti-immigrant, so they have plans for that, and all the other people that they designate as sponges and so on. So I think from a general point of view, as a disabled person, I have been excluded from the media. But also, however, there was this issue that occurred when Britain went along with America in invading Iraq in 2003. And I was already involved prior to that with, protests and demos and benefit concerts and so on during 2002, when we could see that, Tony Blair and his mob were angling to, invade this country, Iraq. And, they'd already had invaded Afghanistan. And we could see this happening, and so there was a lot of agitation within Britain to try and stop it. Of course, it was not going to happen. There's no way we could stop the government, especially when the government is under the control of the United States government. And but anyway, round about the beginning of, towards the end of 2002, me and a theatre company had put in a proposal to the government for a theatre project, namely to stage a play that I'd written about the disabled Holocaust in Nazi Germany. And it's the only play at that time that had ever been written, the only drama that had ever been created or attempted to be created on that subject. The disabled Holocaust has been totally ignored by the main historians and the filmmakers and theatres and so on. There's plenty of material, novels, dramas on the Jewish Holocaust, but absolutely nothing on the disabled Holocaust. And of course, it's only going to be disabled people that are going to try to draw attention to this, especially as we, and just like Jews as well, are always going to be vulnerable to a repetition of this kind of drive to wipe out, exterminate disabled people, remove them from the future. And and we are the ones that have got the vested interest in trying to see to it that that doesn't happen. Although actually I would say all non-disabled people ultimately have a vested interest in that, because they're only temporarily able-bodied. They're all eventually going to become disabled in one way or another. And we've already seen, at least in Britain, that many of the old people's homes and in geriatric hospitals and geriatric wards, a covert euthanasia program going on, and old people are, being deliberately killed. So it does affect everybody ultimately, and people need to think about that and need to really do something about halting this creep towards, universal euthanasia. So that was what was impelling me to write the play back in '96. And I got commissioned to write it, but it was never put on at that time. I also got commissioned a year later to write a film script adaptation of the stage play. And that, of course, was never made either, partly because with the changing government, the various funding agencies that would have been interested were abolished. And so I had difficulties in, which is ironic because the changing government was supposedly Labour from Conservative, but actually, Tony Blair's Labour Party is another kind of Tory party, another kind of Conservative party. It's not socialist in any way whatsoever, and the Labour Party that we now have under a different leadership is still, intrinsically right-wing. But it was ironic that, Tony Blair's government actually removed many of the arts agencies or reduced their funding and turned them into agencies that were more commercial. In other words, people would only get funding, and eventually it was actually called investments. Before there were grants, but now people can only get investments from these arts funding agencies, provided the product is actually going to turn in a profit. So obviously, my chances of getting a film about a disabled Holocaust have been reduced to zero, and that's why I've been struggling ever since to get that made. So anyway, surprisingly, however, towards the end, as I said, of 2002, we put in an application to get funding for the play. And, that's from 96 when I first wrote the play, and now it's 2002. And the money was not really, the money was sort of partly coming from the European Union. And, Tony Blair's lot presumably thought it would be a good publicity stunt if they gave out this money to various theatres and arts projects. And to my surprise, we were awarded £50,000 to contribute towards the play.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I actually had to go to a government-sponsored awards ceremony to actually receive the money from the Minister of Culture and the Minister of Disability and so on. And they were all, Labour government officials personally handing me the money. Now, this was just before the government had invaded Iraq. So that was, that wasn't a problem for me at that time. Then March 2003, the invasion happened, and I just thought, well, I can't accept this money any longer. It's blood money. It's money that's come from a government that is about to kill thousands and thousands and thousands of innocent people and bomb their civilization back into the Stone Age. I can't be party to this regime that is intending on doing that. And also we knew, well, some of us knew, that was the point, some of us knew that the reasons for attacking Iraq were total lies, that, they claimed that there were weapons of mass destruction. Anyway, I say, so what? We've got weapons of mass destruction. France has got them. Israel's got them. Pakistan and so on. Why pick on Iraq? Because they happen to have. But as it turned out, and anyway, we knew that wasn't the real reason. The real reason was that the Americans and the British and the other European allies and Australia and Canada and so on, they wanted Iraqi oil. And it was an exercise, an adventure to steal, natural resources from one group of people in order to solve our own oil crisis. Now, to me, that was patently obvious at the time of the invasion. So there's no way I could accept this money. Not only that, obviously, I was planning to join in as many protests against the war as possible. And the contract that I'd signed with the government regarding the money had a clause saying that neither party should do anything which will, present the other party in bad light. So basically they were saying, right, you're now contracted to us not to protest about anything that we do. Otherwise, we'll take the money off you.
Now, just to interrupt you, wouldn't that mean that they shouldn't be doing anything that would present you in a bad light as well?
Absolutely. And that was part of my press release when I announced that I was returning the £50,000. I said, the government has now, carried out an act which I find offensive and which is a breach of contract because, they are doing something that I don't like. Irrespective of whether irrespective of them not liking what I'm doing. So these are the points that I made in my press release. And so I decided to, go personally to 10 Downing Street, where Tony Blair was living at the time, and to hand him the cheque. And I wanted, obviously, to try and make sure all the media knew about it and covered it. Well, typically, of course, it wasn't covered. And, I didn't think, my action on its own would have any impact. I'm not that, I didn't think it would have any impact whatsoever on the government changing its mind and said, "Oh no, okay, we're sorry, the Bill's not very happy with us. We won't invade Iraq after all. Sorry, George." But I didn't. Obviously, I didn't think it was going to do anything like that. But what I had hoped was that other people would follow my example. That there would be enough people who would think, "My God, fancy him doing that. Well, actually, I am opposed to the war, and let's see what I can do to, bring the government into disrepute and, harm the government in some way." And, obviously I was hoping that it would snowball, and then eventually, the mass of us, would then, be able to persuade or blackmail or bribe or whatever the regime into stopping their war plans. But obviously the media knew that they didn't want any nice examples, going out there, and the government obviously had told the media to ensure that, this kind of thing gets the minimum of publicity. So when I went to hand the check, there was a film crew, a dozy film crew that were just hanging around in the Downing Street. And before I went up to number 10 door, I went up to them and I says, "You know what I'm here for, don't you?" And they says, "No, what are you there for?" I says, "Well, blah, blah, blah." And I told them what the thing was. "Oh, yeah, right. So are you going to film this?" Well, maybe, I don't know. "Yeah, all right. Okay." So I go over to the thing, and the door's open. I turn round, and they hadn't done a thing. They were all still lying there on the floor, bored out of their brains.
Oh, my.
Nothing happening at all. They had no interest whatsoever in filming it and making the story. But a minority radio program, which the BBC were running, they did decide to cover it in some way. They invited me. It was either the next day of me handing the check back, or actually the morning of me doing it. I think it was probably the next day now. And they invited me to appear on some Asian program, join a panel of people who were discussing the invasion of Iraq. And surprisingly, I was the only one out of all the various Asians that were talking on the program that was totally and utterly opposed to the invasion. They were all making various excuses and buying the lies that the media and the government were telling regarding the reason for it. And so I was being, the only one that was banging my fist on the table and so on. And the program was live. That's the thing, I always prefer to do a live program because I can then, try and get in what I can. I know that if it's going to be recorded, then I know that won't happen in your case.
Yeah, no, because I'm going to let it all out there. But the most people would, in a recording, take out any bits that are going to make anything harmful to the public in their eyes or to their image, right? Yeah. And they're going to cut it out. So good for you.
So I was really, I thought, great, this is live. And so I started to say what I thought was the real reason, about the oil and blah, blah. And it had nothing to do with it. There were no weapons of mass destruction that we should worry about that Iraq had. And whatever they say, they're liars. And, the BBC was taking the line, no. There is this and that. And, we don't believe the government could possibly be lying about something like this and so on. And I says, well, of course you don't, because you're the government's propaganda machine. You are working for the government. You're going to back up anything the government says on this issue. And the host of the program got rather upset with me, accusing her of actually being a puppet of the state, and that the BBC and her were just pushing lies because they're paid to, and she's thinking of her mortgage, and she daren't say anything otherwise, and so on. And at that point, she got really angry with me and says, if you don't stop accusing us, blah, 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 I'm going to have to throw you out of the studio. And I says, okay, throw me out of the studio. I don't care.
That's incredible.
That would be proof, wouldn't it? This is live broadcast and you throw me out of the studio. That's proof of censorship. It's proof that you can't handle the truth, and so on. And then the second thing that happened was that the producer who was talking to her via her headphones, and apparently, because she reported back, she says, well, anyway, your protest hasn't been ignored. The producer has just said that he saw it on television. So it must have been, it was obviously the next day. And I said, your producer is a liar, because there wasn't a single camera switched on. There wasn't a camera that was even directed on me handing the check back, because I was watching and hoping that there would be, and there wasn't. So he's just made that up. So
it's incredible what they do, though. I have a different version of the same story where I got up and I was my one and only protest that I went to, because I realized really quickly that it doesn't do a damn thing. Yeah. But I had protested against the idea of the health board being able to come in with a warrant, without a warrant, to my dog shaking in the background, but without a warrant. And being able to just, search your house, because God forbid you should have something from China here that they don't want. They're going to take everything from you, and then you're going to have to pay for it being in storage, and you're going to have to pay for the court costs, and you're going to have to, even if you're innocent, you have to do all of these things. It was Bill C-36. Anyhow, I had gone, this is my first, since I was younger, my first relationship with the media, I guess you could say, my first encounter, and they made me say the same thing into the camera all of 5 or 6 times, so that I would trip myself up. But I didn't trip myself up, and I kept saying the same thing over and over and over again. And they played it at the 6 o'clock news. Now 6 o'clock news, most people are too busy to really sit. And 6 o'clock news is when everybody's eating dinner and the whole 9 yards. So they played the full spiel of what I said at 6 o'clock. But when we sat down, I missed it. I got phone calls from everybody. And at 11 o'clock, when the majority of the people are, watching the news before they go to bed, or 10 o'clock or whatever it was, they had cut all the good parts out. They had cut out all the parts about martial law. They take whatever they want, mold it into what they want, and present it to the people so that it makes the government look the absolute best, and that people like us who are trying to actively inform look crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, of course. The media, I would say everywhere in the world, the mass media is just an extension of government policy. And
definitely.
Is the mouthpiece for government policy. That's the great thing, actually, about, what's happened with the internet at the moment, is that there are just so many opportunities where people have the freedom to present the alternative view to what is going on, and to do it, uninterrupted. That's, I still wonder how long that is going to last.
It's so important. It's so important for as many of us to be out speaking as loudly as we possibly can, and with as much tact. And I don't mean tact as far as you want to be able to give the information to as many people who can take it in. Yeah. Because you're right. We don't know how much longer we have this. I think they gave it to us for a reason. I think that they didn't see what we were going to do with it. I don't think they realized the potential that we had to just take it and run with this ball.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they say that the internet was actually, created by the Pentagon, by the armed forces or the intelligence community in the United States, and obviously it was to help their own method of, global communication, which in some ways was probably hijacked by, various non-governmental people. But nonetheless, they probably still thought it was a good idea, because they realized that it was a good way of monitoring the populations and seeking out those subversives and potential troublemakers and so on, and just basically quietly marking them, and so on. So, I still expect at some point a knock on the door at about 3 o'clock in the morning and be carted off. But that really that is unlikely to happen until whatever I do or whatever you do is beginning to have a huge impact and is seen as a real threat.
Agreed.
To the ruling elite's maintenance and control of power. At the moment, obviously, I'm not having much of an impact, which is why there isn't the knock on the door at 3 a.m, or, accident, which can easily, that's probably one of the easiest things to do, is to, cause me to have an accident, a traffic accident or whatever.
And it's very easy for them to just be able to paint many of us in the light of being crazy.
Oh, yes.
And to get back to the idea of the Holocaust, this touches me quite deeply because I have Roma Gypsy blood.
Yeah.
So it is something, it was a mass Holocaust of many, many levels.
Yeah.
You had the disabled, you had the gypsies, you had the Catholics and the Christians, and you had certain amounts of women and the gay populace, and they were trying to do away with anybody that wasn't going to fit in their shtick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, can you imagine if we had some kind of revolution where everybody that was a victim of the Holocaust got together for one big, because there's too many factions. You've got the Jewish population, you've got the disabled population. If we all came together and cried out that, it wasn't just this, and, the idea of it being 6 million Jews is absolutely ridiculous because it was so many other people that make up that 6 billion number.
Yeah. Well, in a way, that's what Holocaust Day, which occurs about January every year, is supposed to do. That's what I think it should do, is bring all the various factions of victims of the Holocaust, or people who represent the victims, and people who can still be victims, should another Nazi regime decide that, there are only going to be certain types of people allowed to exist. And actually, in my movie version, I've got because of the fact that, Romani people, were also being wiped out, but not getting the press and all their story being told. I deliberately put in a scene in the movie version where a truckload of gypsies have arrived at the railway siding and are being forced to get into the carriages at gunpoint, and the heroine of the story, a disabled woman, she goes balmy, goes bonkers when she sees the brutality that's been inflicted on an old gypsy guy, and the son tries to, help him out, and they're both shot, totally unceremoniously.
And that's really how it was. And you were saying if they ever wanted to do this now, and it just, what's going on now echoes that, but on a much more devious and tame level, I would say.
Yeah.
Because look at what even you're saying. You see that the disabled people are being kind of ousted from society.
Yeah.
There's another campaign to keep the gypsies away. I don't know if you're aware that our Prime Minister sent a big billboard off somewhere in Europe saying that no Roma people allowed in Canada. We're not looking for Romas. And I mean, it made my blood boil. This same thing is going on, but they're taking it it's a different tactic. It's a new level. It's
more insidious.
Exactly.
Sneaky.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And I mean, when then it was so abrupt, and here's gas chambers and starvation and all kinds of experimentation. We have the same thing going on now with, medication.
Yeah.
Let's medicate them with God knows what.
Yeah.
And just, who cares about the side effects? That they're looking at anybody with any kind of emotional disability. It's still a disability. Let's wipe them out. Anything that you can't stand strong on your own 2 feet by their standards, and they're doing their best to make you weaker.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's probably, the real reason why I'm just getting no luck in having the film made. And, I did eventually get the play put on stage. That was 2008. But it only ran for 8 performances. And quite a few theatres that said that they would take it on when we were going to tour Britain pulled out at the last minute. And their claim was that they thought the play might be too depressing and they wouldn't get audiences for it.
Oh, that's just the best excuse ever. They don't want to depress society.
Yeah.
If they didn't want to depress society, they wouldn't have us working for peanuts just to survive. Society's already depressed.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyway, they hadn't seen the play. They didn't know anything about it. And had they actually gone to see those performances that we did manage to put on, they'd have seen A, that we were performing to full houses, B, that yes, it has a very bleak, dark content, but everyone was glad that it was there. And, I was pleased when towards the end the audiences were crying, because that was my aim.
You invoked emotion.
Yeah, exactly. And the point was that I wanted people to relate and identify with the disabled victims and like them and not want to see them dead. And to me, when you see an entire audience in tears, it means they cared about the characters and that they were upset that they had been murdered.
Empathy instead of apathy.
Exactly. Yeah, that was entirely my aim. And the aim, I was pleased to see was achieved. There was comedy in it, there was singing in it, and actually the finale, the end point of the story, and it's more obvious in the movie, is that, the disabled girl escapes, and she manages to get to Britain, and she has a disabled baby born in Britain. And that the whole point of the story is that she is kind of smuggling out of Germany the imperfect genes of her lover.
It's so beautiful.
So although he gets killed in the death camp, she escapes, and she's already been made pregnant, or as they have made love, and she vowed to get out and and cheat Hitler of his purifying of the race conspiracy by making sure that another disabled person was born, and so that was the ultimate conclusion of the play. So it was, in my view, and for for all disabled people at least, was an uplifting ending.
Definitely, because it leaves you knowing that there was hope. And that's what we need so desperately right now. I mean, hope is a kind of a dirty word to me, but it's something to see an example of something that we can strive towards is not impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, are you still looking for backers and sponsors for you to be able to put this film out there and create it?
Yeah, I am.
Good. Don't give up on that. And anybody who's listening who might be able to help support Nabil, please throw your hat in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a number of people who attempted to be producers, and I've still got someone who says that she's still interested. All the others have all dropped out because they said it's just impossible to get investors for this kind of movie. I had a major filmmaker who I'd worked with back in the early 80s, so therefore I sort of knew him, and I was able to find out where he lived, and I actually went and knocked on the door of his house with the script and said, because I thought if I could get him to agree to direct the film, then that would be it. I'd have no problems. I'd get the money because he's such a major A-list director, and fair play to him. He took the script and he read it and came back to me within the 2 weeks that he said he would. So often I've sent the script to people and I never hear from any of them. And they're always like saying, oh, yes, yes, I'm looking forward to reading it, blah, 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 and I'll get back to you, and they don't. But this guy, he did. Well, it's Stephen Frears, actually. And he said he thought the script was good. He was surprised at how good it was. But he's too old for that kind of material. He didn't have the stomach for it. Looked him up, and I thought, well, okay, he is 70. So maybe
a lot of people don't want to get involved. I think they realize it comes. This is my intuition on what you're telling me. It's rather late in life to be stirring such a pot.
Yeah. And I tried to get another person interested, and they said, I've done too many Holocaust movies. I'm completely, I can't do another one now, not at my age. And I want to have, in my late age, I want to, sleep at night. I don't want nightmares anymore. And, if I was to work on your film, it would give me nightmares.
Those sound like an awful lot of excuses, and I'm sorry, maybe I'm hardened a little bit, but I think people are afraid of the truth and being the ones who expose it.
Yeah. So anyway, the current producer, I'm still waiting for some action there, but nothing's happening. And, I mean, I can understand this person is really busy. They're writers themselves, they're producers, they've got 3 or 4 projects on the go at the same time. So that's the problem. Some people say, if you want something done, give it to someone who's busy. But actually, that's not always true.
Yeah, no, it can get shuffled away.
Yeah.
Now, as far as you've also created an actors guild, and I don't want to say the name wrong. Is it the Grey?
It's Grey Eye. Actually, it's a theatre company, which was created way back in 1980 by me and a friend, a guy called Richard Tomlinson. And we basically had this ambition round about the middle of the 1970s to set up a theatre company of disabled actors, and hopefully make it into a full-time professional company, which would be giving work not just to disabled actors, but disabled writers, disabled producers, directors, and crew, and so on. And one of our starting points was actually in Canada. In fact, it was a special convention or conference that was being held in Winnipeg, Canada.
Oh, I was just there last year. Actually, at the beginning of this year.
Well, the thing was, right, me and Richard, we said, okay, we'll make this theatre company. But he had to go off to teach in the States for a year, and I had to go off to be an undergrad at university. So we kind of agreed that, maybe if I had nothing else to do when I graduated, we'd work on getting this theatre company together. Then towards the end of the 70s, when he got back from the States and he got a job working at the Open University, we reconnected and started hatching our conspiracy, our plot. And he said to me, what a good time to get the company established will be in 1981, because that's the International Year of Disabled People. I said, oh yeah, okay. And then I said, well, we ought to get it up and running by 1980, because then in 1981 we'll be in demand. Because you've got all these do-gooders and people who want to be involved in this year enterprise, and they won't know what to do. And they thought, oh, why did we get those? What are they? Just cripples, those performing cripples. What's the company called? Why did we get them and play or something? So I thought, they can, and we'll be the only one, because no one else would have thought of doing this at that point. So we'll be heavily in demand. So that was the plot. And then he says, and another great thing is there's going to be in 1980, which may be the thing that will launch us, this international conference on disability and rehabilitation in Winnipeg, and if we could get them to invite us to do a show, then we'll be performing to an international audience. So we can actually empire build and, take over the world.
Brilliant.
So I said, yeah, that's right, let's do that. So he wrote a load of rubbish to the organisers of the conference, claimed that we had a theatre company, that we had a play and a cast and so on, and we didn't. There was just me and him. And they wrote back and says, oh yeah, we want you. So at which point Richard says, Nabs, we better create this theatre company. We've been invited. So I said, right, okay. So that was around about 1977, 78 that we were like thinking, okay, how are we going to do this? Well, we weren't really starting from scratch, actually, because Richard and I first met at a college in Coventry, Warwickshire, and it was a disabled college, and I was a student and he was one of the lecturers. But he was mad keen on drama and, organising students into doing shows, little shows and that. And so I turned up, and they already had a drama workshop up and running, and I got involved with that. So we actually did do a couple of shows which toured the locality, which turned out to be very successful, and we saw that there was actually a demand for what we had to say. And the shows that we were doing were all about disability, how disabled people saw the world, and what were the issues, what were the problems that we experienced. But at the same time, both Richard and I have a wicked sense of humour, having been brought up on things like Monty Python and so on. So it was important to us that whatever shows we do are entertaining, and that we make people feel good, and so on. So we don't want to be kind of trying to hit them in the face with heavy politics, etc., and certainly we didn't want to come across as moaning cripples. So we constructed our plays, our shows, so that they're sort of very like comedy and singing and dancing and so on. But everything that we did, all the sketches and that, they still had a message. They still covered some aspect of our world. So religion was dealt with, education, medical, of course, which features very big in a disabled person's life. Sex, though we only skated on that. That was still a very taboo area within, with regards non-disabled people's view of disabled people.
Isn't it just ridiculous that we would think, anybody would think, that one being is different than another? Like there's been such a twisting of everything by the media, though. The media has geared us to think differently.
Yeah.
Why would you have sex any different than I have? I'm possibly, obviously, like, there's different versions of how we do things. I don't mean it that way, but
I know.
When it comes down to it, we all pee sitting down or standing up, don't we?
Well, pretty well, yeah. Well, quite. People don't even want to. Well, I think there's sort of two things. Number one, they don't want to imagine disabled people having sex. They find the idea disgusting.
Oh, I just think people are prudes.
There's the thing that I learned when I was doing a psychology degree is that having sex with a disabled person, from a psychologist's point of view, is considered a fetish.
Fetish.
A fetish, yeah. And you will find that disabled people featuring in porno fetish kind of sites, but also we came across various case stories in the abnormal psychology module of someone who could not get aroused by his wife unless she put on leg irons and hobbled about first around the bedroom. Then he got turned on. I had a girlfriend who is the mother of my son, and we were like together for about 10 years, and she's a amputee. And there are clubs of non-amputees who get sexually aroused at the sight of amputees.
We're a very strange species.
Well, absolutely. Well, on the one hand, I think, well, great. If someone finds, people with a particular thing sexy or whatever, why shouldn't they be considered sexy?
Well,
but nonetheless, it still kind of turns into some sort of perversion, and we're abnormal, and anyone that likes someone like me, is considered abnormal. How could they possibly like so? And I've come across that so many times with girlfriends that I've had who are not disabled. And one girlfriend I had, she was a nurse, and she was telling her friends about me, and her friends were saying, "Oh my God, did you actually sleep with him?" And she says, "Yeah." "Oh God, that's gross. How could you?" And that. So and that's the kind of thing that we have to kind of put up with. And then the second thing why I think the general public are uncomfortable with the idea of disabled people having sex is they obviously don't want more disabled people being born. They don't want the market to be flooded with deformed people who are going to degenerate the species.
It just rubs me the wrong way.
So that's why it has remained for a long time a taboo subject, and you don't really get to see examples in ordinary stories, of disabled. I mean, when was the last time you saw in a drama, a disabled person in bed making love to either another disabled person or a non-disabled person?
I'm not one for television, but the only thing that I can say right now, and it's my guilty pleasure right now, is that Game of Thrones, and they have what they call the what do they call him?
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Well, they have a what do they call him in that? The imp. They call him the imp, and he's a little person, and that's the only show that I can think of where they show that it's actually quite interesting, because they show that he really does have a tough go of it, but that he's just like the rest of us underneath it all. So for that, I mean, that's the one thing that I can say, but I don't watch an awful lot of TV. I like the period of that Game of Thrones has come out, and I really enjoy the book series.
Right. No, I know nothing. I know nothing about it because I don't watch television either. I haven't seen television since the invasion of Iraq.
I had to have a girlfriend bother me for 8 months to watch this show. And I was like, no, I'm not watching it. I don't watch TV. And she says, I'm telling you, you have to watch it. So after 8 months, I mean, just nonstop harassment, I had to watch it. I started watching it, and I'm hooked.
Well, I may get the DVD eventually.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah, that's how I tend to do it in the end. Well, that is how I do it. If people are raving about a particular TV show, like Sopranos, I wasn't going to watch that for a long time, and that's mainly because I don't have a television. I refuse to have one in the house, and it all began, as I said, with the invasion of Iraq. I'm kind of boycotting national media, and but I will cheat because I will eventually get the DVDs and watch it on the monitor.
Well, good for you, but then you're not supporting any of the commercials. And the commercials are where the ridiculous amount of programming is stuck in there, and that's something that I just can't stand. I can remember my children wouldn't watch TV, and then they would go somewhere and they would watch television, and that's when they started doing things like, I want. We have to have this. And all of these really unrealistic ideas about what they needed for themselves and who they were. You take the TV away from them, and these children have just give them movies without the commercials.
Yeah.
And there's a different dynamic there because there isn't that constant want.
Well, that's the thing about North America, is that TV and radio exist for one reason only: to sell. And then
for sure.
And the rest of the stuff, like the dramas, are there to entice you to switch the telly on, and the radio music is there to entice you to switch the radio on. But the whole point is to get you to watch the commercials and to sell you stuff. And we were lucky in Britain because we started the other way around. You know, the state created the first broadcasting channels, and they had no adverts. Whereas, like in the United States, it was commercial interest that began television, and the TV was paid for by commercial interest. So you had the sponsors right from the beginning. That's why, you know, those kind of domestic dramas are called soaps, because, you know, it was soap powder that was financing those domestic dramas. And there was this thing that, you know, the people who were sponsoring the dramas or the shows, they would be really monitoring what the show's content was. And they would often say, you know, this show is better than our TV commercials. We can't have that. You know, what we do must always be the most important thing here, and not what, you know, the content of the show. Whereas in Britain, as I said, we were lucky because we started the other way around, and commercial TV didn't start, I don't think, for about 10 years. And by then, you know, people had got used to quality television and radio that was not, you know, dumbed down in order to make products which the programs were trying to sell. And that has been great up until now. Of course, we are now producing rubbish, and because the commercial imperative has completely taken over our entertainment business as well. But we did have a golden age for quite a while when it came to entertainment. So anyway, where was I? I just rambled on about something.
Oh no, we were just talking about commercials and whatnot. And something that I'd like to add to that with the dramas is that it's so much easier to have people focusing on the dramas that's on the telly rather than turn the mirror on themselves and work on themselves. If you're so worried about what's going to happen to JR in Dallas, then you're never going to sit back and look at what's going on in your own relationship, not to mention the fact that they want us to have these unrealistic relationships, because a man is never going to act like, well, not never, but very seldom going to act like they do in these romance shows. And then the women are sitting there looking at them going, why don't you act like Johnny Depp in Chocolate? Well, because that's unrealistic.
Yeah, I do try though.
You know what, though? Men are very romantic, and they have a different way about them, and it's never going to be the way that they're portrayed. And if it is, it's only it's different. Men have their own way to be, just like women have their own way to be. But see, media has made us be exactly what the media has told us to be, and now you have a bunch of really confused people running around this world begging for love.
Oh yeah, but not only that, I had a girlfriend who was addicted to soaps. And she, you know what soaps are like. Well, anyway, they're full of drama. You know, they're full of shouting people. They're full of people cheating on each other and blah, 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 you know. And there isn't a few minutes where there isn't some kind of anxious, climatic, whatever, and so on. And this girlfriend, she believed that a relationship should be like that. So
constant drama, of course.
Yeah. And she thought it was adding spice if she was like constantly flirting with other guys, and you know, and wanting a big argument every now and then. Now, luckily, the woman that I'm with now hates soaps and doesn't like television, and so we have a much more peaceful life. And we also don't have the other girlfriend that I'd been with was also, you know, like you were talking about with regards to your children. You know, a sucker for all the commercials, and was always wanting to have things bought.
The latest things.
Latest thing, and so on. Whereas Marcella, you know, she doesn't like things, and she gets upset with me when I buy her presents and so on, because she doesn't want presents, really. She doesn't want to have stuff. She just wants, you know, animals and plants.
And quality time.
Exactly, and that just makes life so much easier, you know, and you can really relax and enjoy the relationship because there's not all these pressures. that are put onto you, like how you must behave as a man or as a woman, how you must dress up as a man or a woman, and how really, you know, you've got to constantly chase the latest bit of technology and so on. So I still have just a normal mobile phone. I don't have an iPad or any of those kind of things.
The smart dumb phone. Yeah.
I don't want a phone that does everything else. I've got a computer, you know, for the internet. I don't want the phone to do my internet, and I've got a video camera, and I don't want my phone to be taking videos. You know, I'd rather try and film, you know, in a more professional manner with good quality imaging, and whatever. So, and I don't see the reason for me to have the latest device which does everything, including taking me to the toilet.
Oh, it's true though. It does everything for us. I'm just waiting for it to come out and give me my coffee's cream, right?
Absolutely, that's coming. Yeah. Actually, basically, you know, all you have to do is just put the thing in your mouth, and it will stimulate your taste buds and make
the idea of coffee.
Yeah, that's right.
It's the days, you know, there's certain things that I would like to see come from Star Trek. Like, I would honestly would love to have the whole teleporter thing. I really would. Yes. I'm not going to lie. But the food replicator is something that I would never stand for.
Nah.
Never. I have to be in my kitchen. I don't care what anybody says, barefoot, pregnant, or otherwise. I have to be in my kitchen cooking the food with my love, not some machine.
We got this advertising campaign going on now in Britain. You may have it in Canada, which is like posters saying, "Don't cook, eat." So it's encouraging people to just buy convenience foods, to be lazy, not to, you know, be creative in the kitchen or whatever, and just go out and spend more money, because it's actually more expensive to be buying ready-made prepared foods and so on than to actually cook it yourself. But that is some nasty campaign that's spreading all over the country. But I agree. I don't like the idea of the food dispenser, but I do want the teleportation. And because like Marcella, she comes from the Czech Republic, and you know, we would like to be able to visit her family on a far more regular basis than we do. I mean, I can only really go about once a year because I'll be driving from Scotland right down to England to get the boat, and we need to take a boat because we like to take our animals with us. So the cat and dog travels with us, but that means we can only really do that about once a year. Marcella will occasionally fly and spend time with her family, but if we had a transporter, then, you know, instead of Marcella Skyping her parents every evening, you know, she just steps into the cubicle. So I'm working on it. I'm studying.
We all are.
I'm studying physics so that I can work out how to make a transporter.
Oh, I love it. When you have it, let me know, and we'll have coffee and do this face to face.
Yeah,
it's lovely. Okay, now, tell the people what you're working on now. What are your goals right now, and what are you looking towards in the future?
Well, I've got too many things going on. I've got too many projects, and so obviously the first project, which we talked about, is still trying to get the first to go, the movie made. Secondly, I've had a bee in my bonnet since the late 80s of doing a movie about a disabled Viking called Ivar the Boneless, and I did succeed in getting Channel 4 to make a history program on this character with me presenting it in 2003, so that's 10 years ago. But I'd already been working on it and trying to write the novel. I thought, well, the first thing I need to do is write the novel, then I might stand a better chance of getting the film made. So that's an ongoing project. I have written, or I've been writing over the past year, a screenplay of Ivar the Boneless. Ivar the Boneless was allegedly a historical character who had my disability. and it was a couple of medical researchers, historians, who informed me of this round about 1988, 89, that there was this character who had come from Denmark with a great army of Danes and invaded Britain, and conquered about half of England, and also proceeded to succeed in taking bits of Scotland, and he even ended up being, for a short while, King of Dublin, as well as King of York. And he was carried into battle on the back of a shield. So that was the documentary that I did manage to get made. And now that I've been writing a film script, I haven't finished it yet, and I've already written 400 pages. So that's another project that's ongoing. I've got to try and get that finished, because then what I will do is turn it into a novel and try and get it published, even if I have to pay for it myself.
Brilliant.
Because all the books that I've got out in print, I've paid for. It's all self-publishing stuff.
Good for you. And it seems to be the only way if you're going to get it done, because a lot of people a lot of the major publishers don't want to touch stuff.
Oh, no, they don't. They're only interested in celebrities. People who've been on Big Brother or sports, or, people who are not writers, but they sell books. And the business of books now is more commercial than it has ever been.
Oh, it's so bad.
It is. And actually, one of the things that has helped people like us is Kindle. Because, well, we can't sell the books. I mean, I've got about 5-6 books on Kindle that I've written. I hardly sell them. But at least I'm trying.
For sure.
There are just so many books on Kindle now. And how do you get people to know that they exist? That is the big problem, is marketing and getting some distributor. When I first started doing printed books, which was 2005, and set up a publishing company to do that, we just couldn't get any book distributors interested in the product, because as far as they were concerned, it wasn't top 10. And secondly, I started it at a time when bookshops were going into rapid decline. Independent bookshops, they would take the books, but this meant that you had to personally go around each bookshop around the country and, show them the books that you want to sell them. And they won't buy the books. They'll just say, well, we'll take 3 copies, and if we sell them, we'll give you the money. And the problem with that is that, you've got to go back to every bookshop where you left them, and ask them, well, did you manage to sell? Oh, no, we didn't. And you're like thinking, every time I go to these bookshops, it's costing me money and petrol and so on. So it's just impossible when you're such a small scale publisher. But anyway, that was one of the enterprises that I was doing, and which I still continue to do, but I'm only really focusing now on, because it costs me so much money to self-finance the books in print, is like trying to get things out on Kindle. So that's the Ivar the Boneless project. Then I've got various other film projects, like, for example, I'm supposed to be writing a film script for a producer friend about a science fiction movie about a space mission to Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, where NASA and various astrobiologists believe could be the home for some kind of primitive life forms. So the story, but what makes my story different from all other space operas is that all the crew are going to be disabled or dwarves. And I came across the idea way back in the late 90s when another film producer friend was telling me that NASA had said that they were contemplating sending people without legs and dwarves into space because they don't take up so much room on missions. So Marcel, I told Marcella about this, and then one day about last year she said, why don't we write a film script about such a mission, and go to Europa with such a crew. So that's what I'm also writing at the moment. And at the same time, I've got another film script for a short movie called Naked Madonna, and it's based on a true story told to me by one of my brothers. Siblings, brothers, as opposed to comrade brothers. And it happened to him, and it's a ghost story, and it's set in Jordan. And I've now cast one of the main characters. I've got someone to agree to be in it. The script's already written, so I just need to find the money. It won't require a lot of money to actually get that film on the road. I've just got so many things, and maybe the problem is that I've got too many things, because at the same time I'm so curious and inquisitive about the world that I spend so much of my time doing online courses. Coursera, which is this online thing. I got thousands and thousands
Beautiful.
of subjects. So I'm currently studying the history of rock from the 1970s to the 1990s, learning to play the guitar, programming for musicians and digital artists, physics, chemistry, genetics, evolution, astronomy, nanotechnology. Oh, I was just finished doing a course on what do plants know? Do they see? Do they smell? Do they move? Etc. etc. I've just finished that course. I also did a course on animal behavior and so on. So it's completely mad.
It's never a dull moment.
Well, that's right.
But you can never be bored.
I'm never, ever bored.
And there's no excuse for anybody to be bored, because look at all this. There's so much to do.
Yeah, and there's just not enough days and hours to do it in. And time is running out for me. I'm 60. And, obviously I know. And, my girlfriend works in an old people's home. So she comes back with lots of horror stories. And I'm like thinking, oh, man, that's going to be me soon. And that's where also I'm learning about the covert euthanasia program that goes on behind closed doors in these geriatric institutions.
Well, they're destroying the elderly in the way that we used to look at our elders with respect. Our elders used to raise our children. Our elders were the ones that were the wisest, that gave us the best knowledge. And now we're drugging them, and we're starving them.
Yep.
We are heavily disrespecting them in every way, shape, or form, taking their dignity away from them, carting them off into these homes where, and it's no offense to your girlfriend, but these homes should not exist.
No, they shouldn't.
When children and old people are now burdens in our society.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Let the state take care of them.
Well, the problem is that now we're into an age where you're only useful if you're consuming. And you can only be consuming if you've got money, and you can only have money if you're a useful person, someone that society thinks they can earn from you. So so children don't have money, old people don't have money, so they're useless eaters. They're unproductive consumers, and that's the kind of world that we now have. People are not valued for themselves, for their own sake, in the same way as, people don't imagine that, the dog, the cat, the rabbit, the horse, the cockroach, or whatever, they're all lives, and they have a reason to exist, and they are valuable for being alive. And, we don't see that each life form has its own intrinsic value, and it doesn't have to have, or it shouldn't have, a price tag attached to them, and they shouldn't be seen as, well, how can they be of use to me? We measure everything today in terms of how useful is it to me, or to the government, or to a corporation. And if they can't see your usefulness, then they want to see you eliminated or enslaved in some way.
It's a very sad truth, but it's the truth nonetheless.
Yeah. Yeah, and we need to try and, say enough of that. We don't want that anymore. And obviously, one of the ways that I try to do it is opt out. So I don't have a credit card. I've never had a credit card. I refuse to be involved in that thing. And, I try to not cooperate with so many of the things that, the state or capitalism tries to, make me jump and skip with.
It can be tricky, but you know what? Little by little, if you start with just the small things, I mean, that's how I started years ago. Just slowly but surely remove yourself as much as possible. Yeah. It's a daily thing, though. You started out maybe buying your pound of butter, and now you're making it in a mason jar. Isn't that amazing? There's just so many different ways that you can turn it around so that you're not finding the need to take away or to take from them, because it's all genocidal blood money, every last bit of it, from every government all around the world.
Yeah, it is. So, well, that's about all we can do, really, is just look at what is my contribution to perpetuating an unjust, unequal, oppressive system. And if I can see how I am contributing to that, then I need to remove myself from those contributions. So, another thing is to, stop having a bank account and try and find other ways, to pay your bills. And the second thing is, of course, try to reduce the number of bills that you have. But I'm constantly trying to invent some kind of device that will give me electricity for free.
Well, when you're going on YouTube, you can find so many different things that are amazing. We were just looking, because our house right now is oil heating, and oil is very expensive. Yeah. And we were thinking of all these ways that we can do it. And for our bedrooms, we can do the clay pot method, which is just votive candles with 2 clay pots, one on top of each other, and it creates an incredible amount of heat. It runs for 4 hours, or for as long as your votive candles will last, but you can get different types of candles. The emergency candles usually last a lot longer. There are so many different things that we can do. It's just that you have to search it out, you have to study, get your homesteading books out, get all of your resources. It's not impossible to do in this day and age.
Absolutely, it isn't. You could actually, these clay pots, you could build an entire 4 walls with these clay pots and just put the candles in the pots, so that the whole room is completely heated up.
Exactly.
Yeah, and make sure you've got excellent insulation in the roof.
And this is just one little thing that you can do.
Yeah. Well, of course, the big fuel producers don't want people to do that, and but that's one of the best ways of sorting them out, is for people to think, okay, how am I going to get my energy without being dependent on the big oil producers and gas producers and so on.
Yeah, it's amazing what we can do, and it's sharing like this that makes it easier for others, because you coming on the show and speaking to us about your thoughts and what I express in mine, it's just furthering the energy to make these things happen. Yeah. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and also, what's important about what you're doing is that you are allowing people to discover that anybody can take control of their life and, say, right, I'm going to do it my way, and I don't have to do it the way in which society is constantly telling me to do it. So you are bringing to many people to their attention the fact that there are just ordinary people individuals. I mean, one of the reasons why I like being disabled is that I can then say, look, if someone like me can do X, Y, Z, then so can you. And it reminds me, for example, one time I was in hospital, and there was this Indian lady who was a domestic, and she was like sweeping the floor around the beds, but she kept hovering near me, and every now and then I would hear. I was reading a book, and every now and then I would be hearing her going, and she was looking at me and looked like she was going to cry and whatever. And finally I says, "Are you all right?" And she says, "Oh yes, I'm fine." I says, "Oh, you sound like you're upset." And she says, "No, well I am. I'm upset for you." And I says, "What do you mean, for me?" She says, "Oh, it's so sad." I said, "It's sad? Yes, I feel so sorry for you." And I says, "But why do you feel sorry for me?" She says, "Oh, look at you. Oh, you poor thing." So I said, "Well, let me tell you something. Have you ever been to the United States?" And she says, "Oh, no." "Have you ever been to Russia?" "No." And I rattled off various other countries that I'd visited. I said, "Do you actually drive a car?" She says, "Oh, no." And I then went on about loads of other stuff. And I said, "So do you now feel sorry for me?" She says, "No, you should feel sorry for me."
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, I don't necessarily, as an actor, have to be doing a play that is overtly saying anything about disability or that's issue based. Just the mere fact that I'm on stage as a professional and I'm working with other professionals and we are creating an entertainmental story that the audience is loving, that is propaganda in itself, because they're not expecting to see someone like me in control, commanding an audience, being confident. And that's the most important thing, is being able to, say to other people, look, I'm confident, I'm happy with my life. There's no reason why you shouldn't be confident about yourself, believe in your abilities, and actually be content and happy with your life. And that you don't, it's all surface. I may look like a freak to you, but actually I'm not a freak, because I'm just like you and I do all the things that you do. Okay, we live in an environment which makes it physically difficult for people like me to do all the things that you take for granted, but we're working on that. We are trying to persuade those who define the environment to actually make things a lot more accessible. But once everything is completely accessible to us, then we end up being no more impaired than you are. And but that's obviously another reason why the state has decided that they don't want to be doing that, working with us anymore, because it costs money, as from their point of view. And again, they are, thinking in terms of, well, what's in it for us? If we, put lifts and ramps and widen doors and put braille and hearing loops, etc., that's all a cost to society. And, should society be paying for it? Wouldn't it be cheaper just to kill them all, get rid of them? But going back to, why I think it's important, and I'm glad that I was born disabled, is that, it gives me an opportunity to show how there's hope for everybody. And I got told off by one of my agents way back in the past, when he kept presenting me with various offers of film work and TV work, and I was turning them down. And the reason I was turning them down was because the character that they wanted me to play, from my point of view, was reinforcing negative stereotypes of disabled or small people. Usually, I was being asked to play someone who is mean and nasty and greedy, and, some kind of, evil or bad kind of character, or a pathetic victim who, you know, eventually, you know, disappears because they are so pathetic, and so on. So I was turning down so many of these roles, and he got so exasperated with me. He says, "Look, Nabil, you're going to have to make up your mind. What are you, an actor or a campaigner?" And I says, "I'm a campaigner. I use my acting as a means to bring about social change. And that's it. And if I don't think the parts that, you know, I'm being offered is going to achieve the ultimate aim of why I'm in this business, then I'm not going to accept those roles, no matter how much I may be paid for it." Well, needless to say, I didn't have that agent for too long.
You know what, though? Standing by your convictions and being true to who you are is exactly the test in this life, is it not?
Yeah.
Not giving in to the pressures of doing what people want you to do.
Yeah, I don't see any point in that, you know, giving in to the pressures, because, well, you know, I just think I've got a life and I want to make the life that I've been given worthwhile. And it can only be worthwhile if you stay true to yourself. And if you know, especially if the person that you imagine yourself to be is to be some kind of hero. And I think that's important, actually, is that, you know, most people go through lives not imagining themselves as a hero. And, you know, we should start to see ourselves, I mean, a real hero, someone who, you know, wants to help others, who wants to, you know, save or rescue the underdog, even though you may, be in the eyes of others to be an underdog. But there's always someone who, you know, is in a situation which you might feel is worse off than you. And to me, a hero is someone who, you know, wants to give and to sort of, and I think we can all be heroic. And to me, that's the only reason to be alive, is to be a hero. And, you know, even like, I can't stand it if I see someone is, you know, being abused and just stand by and let that happen, you know. And even though, you know, I'm a tiny, fragile sort of person, nonetheless, I encountered the situation because in my head, I'm Robin Hood. I'm, you know, the Lone Ranger, or
of course,
whatever, right? That's in my head, and obviously it's annoying when you find that physically you can't behave like Superman or whatever. Nonetheless, I found myself in a situation where if it was a TV drama, the hero would intervene, and it was a shopping centre, and there was a black guy who was wearing some smart clothes and 5 white skinhead thugs, and it was middle of the day, busy shopping centre situation, and in full view of everyone, these 5 skinheads started to pick on this guy, and I think part of the reason they didn't, I mean, obviously they didn't like him because he was black, but also they resented the fact that he was smartly dressed and he obviously had a job and they didn't have a job. And so they were really, you know, but at that point there was only one of the white guys trying to, you know, rough up the black guy and so on. And they were creating quite a scene, and crowds started to gather. It's like, you know, a children's playground where, you know, you've got a couple of kids fighting and all the other kids congregate to watch and egg them on and whatever. And I was like thinking, hold on a minute, why doesn't someone stop it?
Juvenile Coliseum.
Yeah, why don't they stop it? You know, there's more of them than the 5 skinheads. Can't they see that this is unfair? You know, it's, you know, the guy is outnumbered and so on. And so I was creeping closer and closer and closer to the situation. And I was like thinking, I've got to do something about this. I need to stop this. I can't let this happen. Right? And everyone else was getting more and more excited, and a circle was forming around the warring parties. And then I also saw that the shopping mall had security guards. There's 2 guys in uniform. And I thought, well, why aren't they stopping it? You know, they should be just throwing the skinheads out or whatever. Eventually, the 2 security guards did say, "Oi, you! If you're going to fight, do it outside, not in here. That was, I thought, bloody typical. They don't care that, 5 guys are about to beat the shit out of this black guy. All they care about is it doesn't happen on their premises.
Of course.
The skinheads said, right, okay. So they grabbed hold of the black guy and marched him out of the shopping mall. Of course, the crowds followed, and there was me following as well, still thinking, what am I going to do about it? How can I fight them? How can I stop them? I've got to stop them somehow. Oh, what do I do? So anyway, by now, when I got out there, because I was a bit slower than everybody else, the black guy and one of the skinheads were now grabbing each other and were sort of having a tussle, and the other 4 were looking and contemplating whether to join in. So I'm now moving closer and closer to them, still mumbling to myself like a lunatic. And next thing I know, I'm right up against the 2 guys that are fighting. And I could see out the corner of my eye that both of them were getting a bit disturbed by this little fellow in a wheelchair getting up close to them. And they weren't concentrating anymore on their fighting. And they keep looking down at me. And then one of the other skinheads is saying, hey, John, watch the little fella there. Watch the little fella. And the guy looks down. He says, oh, yeah, right. Sorry, mate. And they let go of each other. And the skinheads move off in one direction. And the black guy moves off in the other. And the audience are like thinking, oh, what happened there? And I'm like thinking, oh, what did I do? I stopped it without doing anything.
That's beautiful.
Just by being, an obstruction in a way. And I think, but the point is that, it's just a pity that, people, okay, I did it accidentally. And, if I'd gone in and said, oi, stop it, you lot, of course I'd have been beaten up as well. And I was trying to think, what words could I use without being aggressive, without being provocative or trying to even put down the 5 skinheads? What kind of pacific words could I utter that would just stop it? Of course, I couldn't think of anything because I just knew that, they were thugs and they just wouldn't appreciate anything that I would try to say. And I was just lucky that, that stopped it. But that's the thing, we need to have in our heads this image of ourselves as a heroic person who wants to, protect others. And, that's the message that one needs to try to give out to people. And then, we then will not allow, if we all behaved like that, and if we were all people who question whatever those people in authority tell us and don't pick up the gun just because they said, go kill, and say, why? I don't want to.
Well, that's something that's very, very disturbing to me and many others, is the idea that our military, who are supposed to revere and respect and, adore, they're just hired hitmen who are mass murderers going out and killing because they're paid to for our governments, and it no longer has anything to do with freedom. And getting back to the idea of being a hero, I think it's so important that we're heroes to ourselves first, that we stand up for ourselves, make it okay for ourselves, because until we can do that, we can't do it for anybody else. So once you become your own hero, just to add to what you're saying, then you can go out there and be that hero for other people. And I'm not saying that you've got to go out and save the world, because that's just absolutely ridiculous. But you save yourself and then you move outward with it.
Oh yeah, you can't allow anyone to bully you, and you've got to stand up for yourself. Obviously, if I wasn't someone who is quite capable of standing up for myself, I couldn't have even thought about trying to sort of help that black guy or
exactly
anybody else that I've kind of intervened in or whatever. So you've got to have that inner strength first, and you've got to have that self-confidence and that belief that you have a right to defend yourself. not necessarily with a gun. I don't think people should be going around carrying guns or whatever, but you don't have to take shit from anybody, because who are they? They're not more important than you. They're as important, but they're not more important. Therefore, they have no right to put you down. And if you believe that no one has a right to put you down, no one is better than you, no one is superior to you, equally, no one is inferior to you. But so if you have that belief in yourself, then that is the only way, obviously, one can be able to, be a hero for others.
I agree completely. It's so true. I am so glad that you joined us today. If you could leave the listeners with just a few snippets of where they can contact you, and where they can go to view what projects you're working on.
Well, I'm openly available, obviously, on Facebook. So that's one way in which I'm accessible. Another way is obviously YouTube, though that's a one-way thing. Although obviously people can always send me messages via YouTube, as I believe you did.
And yes, and your channel's called Nab Scabs.
Or Scabs Nabs.
Scabs Nabs. I'm sorry.
Scabs Nabs, yeah. That goes back to the early 1980s, when I had this fantasy of having a rock band, which was called Scabs Nabs.
Brilliant.
And I was singing this song, which was a song in the show that we did in 1980, the first show that Grey Eye. Oh, you were asking how it should be said. It's Grey Eye, which is spelled Graeae. But the song that I used to sing in our first show was called Blind, Crippled and Black. And I was always introduced, the number was always introduced as, and here is the Reverend Scabs Nabs. So that's how come that name is, I've tended to use that as my handle.
Absolutely love how you make it a comedy. If you can't laugh at it, then you can't get through to the people.
That's right. Yeah.
So you have Facebook and you have YouTube.
Yeah, that's actually I don't really. I'm on LinkedIn, though I'm not quite sure what use LinkedIn is really. Maybe I don't use it properly.
I don't know. I don't use it at all.
No, I just think it's I just don't rate it very highly as a means of networking, and that's it really. I think it's just, but as I say, I'm public on Facebook, so that means anyone can see me and talk to me or whatever, and every now and then I am putting new videos on the Scabs Nabs. Also, my books are all available on Amazon and Kindle. So if you want to just type in Nabil Shaban on Amazon, you do eventually get to me, to see whatever I've got there. And there is a website that we've got, me and Marcella, which is called serious.pictures.co.uk. I think it's serious.pictures, because that's the name of the film company, Serious Pictures. And I've had that company since '95. So the first film that I made was a documentary about ghosts and haunted institutions for disabled people, and it's called Another World. And the woman that was the presenter, if you like, or the investigator of the supernatural, was my then girlfriend, the woman who hasn't got hands, Tina, and her face is also badly scarred. And she was in fact the inspiration for the character that I created in The First to Go. I said that there was this heroine, this woman who, she started out not being disabled, and she belonged to a well-established autocratic Aryan German family. Her father and grandfather were, in the high command of the German army, and her mother's an aristocrat, and so she was, well immersed in the German establishment, and obviously they were all Nazis, but she obviously didn't know the real truth of Nazism, as many Germans didn't until it was too late. And so she starts off, you'd think, like being one of the bad people, but she's not really, and she actually wants to be a nurse, and she becomes an army nurse because she thinks the German soldier is the bravest soldier in the world, and she wants to nurse them back to health to help defend the fatherland. But the hospital where she works is bombed by the Brits, and she tries to rescue all the patients and get them out of the burning hospital. But as a consequence, she becomes very badly injured, and her face becomes scarred, and her hands are amputated. So it's a story about her, and how, after a long period of recovery, she of course realizes that she can never be a nurse again. The hospitals wouldn't let her go anywhere near their patients, certainly not soldiers. Eventually she manages to get a volunteer post at an institution for disabled people, and that's how she meets the disabled inmates who are earmarked for death, and that's how she gets involved in that whole thing. But anyway, the woman, the character that I created, was totally inspired by my former girlfriend Tina, and so she was the first person that I worked with in film, and I used her because obviously people would not expect someone with such severe facial disfigurement to be fronting a documentary. And it's important that I say, I'm opposed to body fascism. And I think, this woman has got a lot of talent. She's got a lot of personality. She's funny. She's got loads of energy, and she can, present something which people actually will be interested in and will look beyond the so-called superficial disfigurement. So that was, one of the main reasons why I was very keen to have her present this documentary. And that was actually the first thing that I ever made as an independent with my own company in 1995. So Serious Pictures has been around since then. And, we're just only getting that new website going. Marcel has been working on it hard. But that will be another, portal whereby I can be contacted.
That's just brilliant. And I look forward to seeing more of your work. I enjoy your videos. It was definitely Justin who introduced me to you, although I will admit that I was watching you when I was very young when you were on Doctor Who.
All right.
Just many, many moons ago. It was very popular in Canada.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time with us today. And again, taking the time to share your bits that were so incredibly inspiring for our film. It's been a pleasure speaking to you. And anytime that you want to come back to the show and have a chat, make sure that you do.
I will, yeah. And thank you very much for asking me to talk. And I hope you weren't too bored. And
not at all.
And it was a real privilege to meet you and talk with you. And because I know that you've been fighting battles, and you are still fighting battles. And another time, I'd like to talk with you more about what you're doing and who you are and so on.
I would love to sit back and talk with you more, and I definitely will be doing that. Now, to the listeners, thank you so much for tuning in today. You have been gifted a wonderful interview, not on my part, from Nabil Shaban, and it was an absolute pleasure to have him. To everybody listening, have a great day, evening, morning, whatever it is where you are, and we'll talk soon. Peace.